Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of The Democratic View. I'm the hostess. My name is Phyllis Italiano, and today I have with me a really special man in my life who happens to be my family doctor. His name is Dr. George Dempsey, who has a wonderful practice over there on Pentago Road, and is also very well known as the expert on ticks. And who hasn't had ticks around their house and their body even? So Dr. Dempsey, do tell us a little bit about your life. Everybody likes to know a little bit about a person.
All right. Well, I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and shortly was in France for almost a year. And my father, as an architect, was going to work for a known architect there. And things didn't pan out, so we moved back to his hometown in St. Louis. My mother, being French, was still learning English at the time. And after a few years, my father found work in New York, where he loves and stayed the rest of his life. So from the ages of 8 to 14, I was in New York, and he built a house here in Bridgehampton in '67. And so that's been the only house I've ever had in my life. So until recently buying one, but before that we lived in apartments, so this was home. And so coming out here meant a lot to me. Thereafter, when I was around 14, we moved to California, and with my mother, my parents splitting up, and I went to high school and college out there and finished my studies at UCLA. And then after that, I went to medical school at Mayo Clinic in Minnesota.
Oh, really? I didn't know that about you, Dr. Dempsey.
Yeah, it's quite a place.
I mean, I read all those things all the time in your office that are hung up, but I never really look at them.
No one really looks at those things. But, yeah, so that was 4 years of real cold weather compared to our winter, but it was a great experience. And then I came back here and did my residency at Stony Brook. That was finished in '92, and thereafter I actually decided to get away, and I went to Hawaii. And my second child was born in Hawaii, and we raised our kids there till 2000. So they were about 8 years old. And at that point, began to feel like I get back with civilization and be back with my European culture. And want my kids to learn a European culture, since Hawaii is a different culture. And so I wanted to get to know their family and get an education like most of us know what an education is. And stayed here since, and I've been really happy to be able to be out here. I've always wanted to practice out here.
It's interesting that you mentioned that all these places that you went to and liked being in are all sort of associated with the beach.
Yeah.
You know, I think if you are around the beach when you're a kid, it becomes a life thing with you. I know, I mean, I used to just go as a kid to Orchard Beach, but my father was a swimmer, liked to be in the water. And, you know, from there to Jamesport to, you know, to Fire Island to out here, and always been a beach bum.
It's only 4 years of my life in Minnesota, which had many great things, but there was one thing missing. You just felt it, and I said, I just can't. Could never live here. I could not stay.
You know, I had the same thing. I went to school. I went to American University in Washington, D.C., started my teaching career in Maryland, and I just said, I can't live here. It's too far from the beach. It was like such a long drive, and then, you know, to even forget Chesapeake Bay, it's not worth it, but to get to the ocean, and their ocean was bloop, bloop. Not like our ocean, our man-made ocean that we have there. So how did you get involved in the whole tick issue?
Well, that's because of the challenge of Lyme disease. You know, when I came here, it's unique to this area. It's the controversy and the challenge of understanding this disease. I felt that I had to take it on. It's still so much difficulty with it. Misconceptions is one word, but it's more than misconceptions. We don't have ways of really, we don't understand enough about it and how it affects us. We don't understand enough about ourselves to understand it. So it's a bit of everything. It's just a huge challenge, and I just wanted to, that's for me, I've always wanted to do research. When I was in medical school, I was going to do a PhD in addition to the MD at one point, and I've always had this interest in trying to produce something, to come up with something research-wise that was meaningful. So this was like, I took this on. This is my challenge.
Well, it not only is a challenge, but it's also becoming a big challenge all over the United States.
It's growing.
Yes. I mean, we're now talking about it on a national level, whereas we've always talked about it around here. And what is so surprising, I mean, I have this handout that you gave to me when I was there with my last tick bite, when a tick was on me overnight, and now I have to take that medication. But this, and the first sentence that says that ticks are so ubiquitous on this earth, among the most ubiquitous of creatures of all time. And that is really amazing that they're all over. I mean, they're no matter what. I mean, no matter where you go, there's going to be ticks.
Wherever there's blood, there's ticks.
Wherever there's blood, wow, that's, wow.
But it's true. I mean, there's the mammals, anything, lizards, snakes, reptiles, birds, anything. I mean, if they could get fish, they probably go after fish, but they haven't done that yet.
Wow, because I mean, I remember last year saying, because we had some snows last year, not in 15, but in 14 we had some snows, and I thought, oh, that's going to kill all those ticks. And yet I kept getting them, and as I went out to the garden, and I would have to get them off me, and most of the times I do. And then this year, well, I mean, come on, there was this much ice all around.
Yeah.
And they were there.
Yep. They don't like dry. Because they can dehydrate. They can dry out. They don't mind the cold. So when you have a protective layer of the wind so they don't dry out, that's more important. That's what the snow provided. So, yeah.
I had no idea. I kept saying, how could they live? How could they live? But they did.
As soon as the temperature gets up to where the snow melts and the ground is just above freezing, they'll become active again. So that's why we've had them in March, even earlier sometimes, have people, it depends on the year, if you have a warm year.
Right.
They can still get tick bites. I remember that, an 80-year-old lady, I had it like in March. Hardly even goes out of the house. And it's like, how did you do that?
I showed you this plastic bag, which was one of the ticks that I had on me. I think it was a year ago. It's a little tiny thing that you can hardly see in this plastic bag. And the tick that really was the first one that I had overnight and I didn't catch, the one that was extracted last week, and then I'm now on the antibiotic for because of the joint pains, fatigue. But that one I had put in one of those little orange things that you get in the doctors, in the druggist, from the druggist, and
no,
I could never find it. I don't know whatever happened. He's probably still alive somewhere in my bedroom. God knows. I must vacuum when I get home.
Yeah, the same color as the bottle, so.
Yes, so it's hard to see them.
Yeah.
Much better when you get them to put them in a plastic bag.
Yeah, I tell people, plastic bag, where a 3x5 card can fit in that's white, put in there. The card, you can easily see it against
right.
it.
Oh, what a good idea.
Then I stick it under the microscope right away, and I can identify the tick right away. It's convenient and tell you what to expect.
Why do you want to identify them?
We have more than one type of tick. We have several types of ticks out here, and the deer tick is only just one of them. And we have the dog ticks, and now the Lone Star is really, really coming prominent out here, and it's migrated from the south.
Yeah, and that's relatively new, isn't it?
Past couple of years, it's very aggressive. It's taken over. In fact, I'd say 90% of my tick bites are Lone Star, if not more.
Yes, I'm sure my last one was a Lone Star too, because it was the tiny, small, orangey-looking one, which is the Lone Star, correct?
Yeah, if you can see it with the Lone Star adult, which is a little bit bigger than the nymphs, is you can see a little dot on it, a little white dot that makes it very easy to identify. But when they're little like nymphs, and that seems to be nymph size, it's hard to tell just eyeballing it. You need to get under magnification to see.
And they also have these stages of their lives.
Right.
You know, they go from this nymph to
The larvae,
the larvae.
nymph, adult.
Wow.
So larvae are hatched. For most diseases, they're virgin, they're disease-free, but that's just in terms of Lyme disease. Then when they bite a mouse or something small, they become a nymph. If the mouse had something, a disease, then the nymph will be carrying the disease. And then we get bitten a lot by nymphs. That's one of the main causes of Lyme disease is the black-legged tick. The nymphs are very active in the spring.
You know, one of the things we did in Fire Island among the several communities that we were attached to, we did these little tubes that had the cotton inside, that because the white-footed mouse, at that time we didn't have many deer anyway, the white-footed mouse was really the host of the
It still
tick.
is, yeah.
Yes, I know it's yeah.
I mean,
of course
still is it's a major part of the life cycle. So yeah, each stage is important. The mouse, and then the deer is where the adults meet. They kind of meet like a bar and hang out and mate. And they fall off.
You mean
That's really
that's happening on those 12?
They're having a good
on
time
those
there.
deer?
Yeah.
Little do they know. They should have a little neon sign that says, you know, drinks here.
Well, they do in their own way. They have chemicals they excrete and hormones and pheromones. They communicate and they know each other's there. They're very sophisticated.
You know, nature is just unbelievable, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I was amazed because when I was reading this whole article, which was just fascinating, you know, and I have a little science background, not much, but a little. I mean, I know that, you know, a virus is DNA with a protein coat. I know that, you know, a lot of people don't. But it just amazes me that in the concluding sentence in here is that ticks may have been involved in our own evolution.
That's my own theory, but I like
I
it.
do think it's got, I said, wow, I bet that's true.
It wouldn't surprise me because they've been around so long and they're transmitting DNA between different organisms. So there's information going back and forth.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So what are some of the diseases that they carry? We know about Lyme's disease, and we know the symptoms of Lyme disease, which is the joint pain, fatigue, malaise,
Headaches.
As you say it, I'll get one.
Difficulty concentrating. Yeah.
I've always had that all my life.
But actually, it's really diverse, and it's actually in the same family as syphilis, the spirochete. So it actually has a lot of similar traits as syphilis, and syphilis affects very different organs, you know, various different organs, and primarily it affects the blood vessels and causes inflammation in blood vessels as well. So that's how it also can affect us. I mean, there are cases of affecting the heart, which aren't as common. It affects the heart conduction.
Wow.
Yeah, it can affect a lot of different areas. But you know, the ones we know about most commonly is affecting joints and the general feeling of achy and so forth. And then, but the real arthritis usually happens months later from the original time it becomes in your body. That happens much later. The real arthritis, where you get a big swollen knee or another large joint, doesn't happen right away.
And if you get on the antibiotic, the name of the antibiotic again that you
like tetracycline, doxycycline, amoxicillin works well too. A couple others work well, but our first choice is always doxycycline. And one of the main reasons is doxycycline has better penetration to the brain. So if you want to cover in case it's something that disseminates early to the brain, that you're covering that as well. So it's covering your bases by using doxy. But you get a regular rash, a thing like that, it'll work well with penicillin, just like syphilis. hate to make the analogy, but it's,
God.
that's how we look at it.
What a comparison. Holy mackerel. Jeez, that's enough to shake you in your boots.
Yeah.
If you do get on this antibiotic, you then do not develop the swelling and the arthritis, hopefully?
The vast majority of times, people, if it's early to treat it, it's taken care of. And if it stays in the system, that's where it gets more tricky. And we aren't sure. I think, there's a lot of controversy about long-term use of antibiotics and so forth with it. And I think most people are coming to agree that there's more to it than an infection going on at that point. And what's happening is that our immune systems are responding in a way that's making us feel bad. Because what makes you feel bad when you're sick is not the infection, it's your immune system fighting it.
Oh.
If you have someone on chemotherapy or HIV or something where they have no immune system or very poor immune system, they don't get that sick. They don't make a fever, they don't get achy. They say, I just don't feel so hot. And then you do a test and you find out they're going to die within a couple days. It's because they don't respond. There's no war. There's no fight. So you do need an immune system to fight infections, and what makes you sick is your immune system fighting what you call sick. So it's that we think now is it's setting off certain immune responses that then make us feel lousy. So that's where it gets complicated. That's where it gets interesting, and that's where we have to know more about ourselves. When I'm saying we have to know about ourselves as well as know about Lyme, it's on both sides we have to understand it.
And now there are other diseases besides Lyme's disease, am I correct?
So the other ones you have very common out here would be babesiosis, which its analogy would be malaria. And it infects your red cells the way malaria does. And malaria, that's what it does. And then
I know, they burst.
And they burst, right, exactly. And so what happens with babesia is the same thing. You can actually see it on a microscope, just like malaria. You could see it in the red cells. You could diagnose it just under a microscope, just throwing it under there and looking at it and doing a little stain on it, and you can see. But so your blood counts drop. You get really sick, but it does respond to similar medications too as malaria. They're anti-malaria medicines that we treat it with. So doxy doesn't work that well. It has to be a different medicine. Then the other one, ehrlichiosis, which a lot of people get really sick, and a lot of people end up in the hospital with that. That one is actually in the same family as Rocky Mountain spotted fever. So all the diseases and ticks have analogies of other illnesses we have in the world. It's not like a total unknown. They're actually just called different strains of the same family of bacteria.
Wow, and how do we get people to know what to do? I mean, I know there was a letter in the Star today, or yesterday actually, where some guy was talking about taking a white sheet and going along on his grounds and counting how many ticks he got out on that. And I thought, I'm going to do that and see what happens.
Actually, I was thinking that too. Just recently, I was talking to someone about that. What the entomologists who study insects and ticks do is they call it flagging, and they go over a certain fixed area and they make the counts, and that's how they start do their studies. How many ticks per area are there, and so forth. But it makes sense. Actually, the people who do tick spraying, a lot of them have gotten very knowledgeable and sophisticated, and they do that same thing along properties to see how well their treatments are going and to get a sense of what needs to be done. I think it's a great idea for people to do. It's just a sheet. It's not that hard. You can drag it along. It's not,
No, it's not rocket science.
No, and
just drag the white sheet along and then you count them.
And if you do it in a while, you get better at it. You get a sense of what you're looking for and so forth. And it gets you in touch with reality. What's really out there?
Yeah. Are any of these tick control things? For instance, I get my property sprayed with garlic and ground chrysanthemum leaves, I believe it is, that they use. Do you think any of that works?
Well, it's interesting. Recently, there's Dr. Mather, Tom Mather. He's at the University of Rhode Island, and he really is a tick person. That's all he does. And he is looking at these types of things, and he's actually doing a study comparing different preparations, the natural ones and the organic ones, different types. And it's ongoing right now. I think it's on his website. He has a fantastic website. I recommend it. Everybody should have access to that website. And it's called tickencounter.org.
Ticksencounter.
Tick, one singular, tickencounter.
Oh, tickencounter.
.org. University of Rhode Island. It's amazing. It's the most informative website. It's detailed. It's full of information. But going back to your original question, so far he was saying that the natural products don't seem to be faring as well as they would hope. But this, it's a little early. I wouldn't say for sure, but it may not be as effective.
Well, it's a little hard for me to put anything
I know.
that's not natural, since I know about the
it's
water
hard.
under our feet, and I'm not going to poison that. I don't want to die of that. I'd
agree.
rather get the tick bite. And what we do in my family is that when anybody has been outside, working outside, and they come in the evening, especially the little children, we do a tick check.
Yeah. Oh, you do it every day, right away.
Yes.
Especially up in the groin area, behind all the crevices, under the arms. That's where they like to go. And that's where people look the least. They look on the body, oh, I'm okay. They look on their legs. But they go into corners, into areas, into the groin, between the legs. That's really where you got to really make an effort.
And apparently they don't like lavender.
I heard that too.
And I know the soap that I use in my wash has a little lavender in it, and I have a bar of lavender soap, which if I know I'm going to go out, I make sure that day I shower with that, although I've been doing it now every day, whether I'm out or I'm not out, because, I just know they're out there waiting for me now. Another thing I do when I come in is, even though I put my hair back and I insist my grandchildren, have their hair up when they go out. But when I come in, I always brush really, because they seem to, I have gotten ticks in the sink, as a matter of fact, from that. A good stiff brush through your hair, like that,
Boy.
And even though I wear my hair up when I'm out, but they seem to like that little warm place in my scalp.
Well,
Maybe it's the
fortunately,
blonde.
fortunately, usually it's the dog ticks that go to the head, and the deer ticks and the lone stars tend to go lower down. It seems to, that's as a
The
general
tick
rule.
I had was right here, right here on the waistline. And another thing I do is I make sure that I tuck in my pants into my socks. I tuck my top into my pants, with a elastic thing here to hold it, so that it's a little harder for them to. And then when I come in, I take all that stuff off and throw it in the dryer. Correct?
Good. You have to do it. Yeah, I don't remember how long, but dry is really good. A certain period of time.
Yeah, I leave it on for a while, because I'd say, I'm gonna.
Well, one of the things to do preventive, one of you mentioned the tubes with the cotton. Actually, this Dr. Mather invented it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I learned that. And it's basically cotton with permethrin.
Yes.
So what the mice do is they think cotton's great for making my nest. So it doesn't hurt the mice, but they take it to their nest, and when they make their nest and live in it, the ticks that are on them die. So they're the ones that carry the ticks around. So they're basically killing the ticks.
Well, that was what we were told when we originally did it out in Fire Island. And
so that's one good step in your house. The other thing is to clear the yard so that there isn't a lot of stuff hanging over. Make sure the grass remains, mowed and long. If you can have more sunlight so there isn't a lot of trees and things covering it, because ticks like shade, they like moist areas. Make sure you don't have wood piles and things around, because they like to live in those areas. So you also can do is you can even make a perimeter of gravel or stones around the outside of the yard, and they don't like crossing over that as much. They rather stay in the moist leaves under the woods, and that's kind of like, it's a little bit of a deterrent. So a lot of things you can do. The other thing with permethrin, which I should get into the market of selling it out here, because you have to buy it online or something. But permethrin is it's used for head lice. So it's used in children overnight to kill head lice. It's safe enough to do it, as a one-time application. Well, you can put it on your clothing, and you could spray it on the clothing. It chemically connects to the cloth on your clothing, and so it actually stays for several wash cycles. So if you have outdoor gardening clothes, things you use routinely outdoors, and you spray it inside and out, then all that the ticks are not going to come up. And you spray your shoes, you only do it once a month. And that'll take care of it. And you have socks that are your...
Oh, well, when are you going to
and
start
that way,
selling
and that's
that
not getting
on
into
the
your...
corner?
I know, I want to put in like a little vending machine in my office or something, a little size thing.
Yeah, because I don't know where to
That's
get
one
it.
of the few things that's been shown to be effective, significantly effective for prevention. They've done enough studies that say this really works. Now, the other part of it is you can also buy online clothes that have been impregnated, and you can buy them. That lasts for 70 wash cycles.
Wow.
So there's stuff out there. People just need to know about it and need to use it. And that's probably your most valuable prevention type of thing, where you're using an effective insecticide that's relatively safe, but it's not getting to the groundwater because it's literally attached to your clothes.
Exactly.
And so the amount is, the exposure to your local ecosystem is relatively small. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to push. When someone comes with a tick bite, I should have showed it to you. Usually I show everybody my little bottle of permethrin. And
Yes, you did.
yeah.
You did.
That's right.
You did show it to
I'm
me.
trying
And
to
I
show
said to you
everyone.
right then and there, well, where can I get it? I mean, I think there's someplace, around that you can
I
get
think
it.
maybe in Riverhead. I'm sure one of the outdoor supply places.
Yeah, I'm sure they do too.
But,
Well, all right, I'm going there on Monday.
Okay, yeah.
To get
I want to
them.
get some more, yeah.
Because it is important to do. Because nobody wants to have, nobody wants to spend their summer being sick.
Yeah. There's some are always worrying about the things crawling
Not
on
only
you.
that, but I love working outside in the garden. I really do. I mean, I work till, the sun goes down. I love it so much. There's, the air, and it feels so good and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
how do they like salt water? If you go in the water?
Well, they can't survive that long that I know of in the water. It was interesting, we just heard that someone had it in a jar for that long and it survived. But in general, they can survive submersion in water if they're attached to a bird or something and coming out. That's been documented.
Well, you have taught us a lot, Dr. Dempsey, and we are going to go on and try to make sure that we do everything we can so that we don't have to visit you with, I had a deer tick today.
Right.
Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
And I will see you in your office one of these days again.
Without a doubt.